Beauty by Sewell. Chapter 15. A horse fair is a very amusing place. There is plenty to see there. A great many young horses out of the country, little Welsh ponies no higher than Merrylegs, and hundreds of cart horses of all sorts, and many horses like myself, handsome and high-bred, but fallen into the middle class through some accident or blemish. In the background there were a number of poor things, sadly broken down with hard work. The gentlemen turned away from me when they saw my broken knees, but the man who wanted to sell me said it was only a slip in the stall. The buyers pulled my mouth open, then looked at my eyes, then felt all the way down my legs, and then tried my paces. And they all did these things differently. Some did it in a rough way, as if I was only a piece of wood. Others would take their hands gently over the body, with a pat now and then, and I judged all the buyers by their manners. About one buyer I thought I should be happy if he bought me. He was not a gentleman. He was rather small, but well made, and quick in all his motions. I knew by the way he handled me that he was used to horses. He spoke gently and had kind grey eyes. He offered £23 for me, but that was refused, and he walked away. I looked after him, but he was gone. And then a very hard-looking and loud-voiced man came. I was afraid that he would buy me, but he walked off. But just then the grey-eyed man came back again. I reached out my head towards him, and he stroked my face kindly. "Well, old chap," he said, "I think we should suit each other. I'll give 24 for him." "Say 25 and you shall have him." 24.10, said my friend in a very decided tone. "And not another sixpence. Yes or no?" "Done," said the salesman. The money was paid on the spot, and my new master led me out of the fair to an inn, where he had a saddle and bridle ready. He gave me oats and stood by while I ate them, talking to himself and talking to me. Half an hour later we were on our way to London, and in the twilight we reached the great city. The gas lamps were already lighted. There were streets to the right, and streets to the left, and streets crossing each other for mile upon mile. I thought we should never come to the end of them. At last we came to a long cab stand, where my rider called out in a cheery voice, "Good night, governor." "Halloo!" cried a voice. "Have you got a good one?" "I think so," replied my owner. "I wish you luck with him." "Thank you, governor," and he rode on. We turned into a very narrow street, with rather poor-looking houses on one side, and what seemed to be coach-houses and stables on the other. My owner pulled up at one of the houses and whistled. The door opened, and a young woman, followed by a little girl and boy, ran out. "Harry, my boy, open the gates and mother will bring us the lantern." The next minute they were all standing round me in a small stable yard. "Is he gentle, father?" "Yes, Dolly, as gentle as your own kitten. Come and pet him." At once the little hand was patting about all over my shoulder without fear. It felt so good. "Let me get him a bran mash while you rub him down," said the mother. "Do, Polly. It's just what he wants, and I know you've got a beautiful mash ready for me." I was led into a comfortable, clean-smelling stall with plenty of dry straw, and after a good supper I lay down, thinking I was going to be happy. Chapter 16. My new master's name was Jeremiah Barker, but everyone called him Jerry, and I shall do the same. His wife Polly was a good match for him. She was a plump, tidy little woman with smooth dark hair, dark eyes, and a merry little mouth. They had a 12-year-old son, Harry, and a little 8-year-old daughter, Dorothy. They called her Dolly. They were all fond of each other. I never knew such a happy and merry family before or since. Jerry had his own cab and 2 horses, which he drove and attended to himself. His other horse was a tall, white, rather large-boned animal called Captain. Though he was old now, one could see he was a high-bred, fine-mannered and noble horse. He told me that in his early youth he went to the Crimean War. He belonged to an officer in the cavalry and used to lead the regiment. The next morning, when I was well groomed, Polly and Dolly came into the yard to see me and make friends. Polly brought me a slice of apple and Dolly a piece of bread. It was a great treat to be patted again and talked to in a gentle voice, and I tried to show them that I wished to be friendly. Polly thought I was very handsome and too good for a cab. "We'll call him Jack, after the old horse. Shall we, Polly?" "Do," she said. "I like to keep a good name going." Captain went out in the cab all the morning. Harry came in after school to feed me and give me water. In the afternoon, I was put into the cab. After driving through the side street, we came to the large cab stand. We pulled up in the rank at the back of the last cab. 2 or 3 men came round and began to look at me and pass their remarks. "Very good for a funeral," said one. "Too smart-looking," said another, shaking his head in a very wise way. "One of these mornings you'll find out something is wrong with him, or my name isn't Jones." Then there came up a broad-faced man in a grey coat with grey cape and big white buttons, and a grey hat. His hair was grey too, but he was a jolly-looking fellow. He looked me all over, and then straightening himself up, he said, "He's the right sort for you, Jerry. I don't care what you give for him. He'll be worth it." This man's name was Grant, but he was called Grey Grant, or Governor Grant, and he settled matters and stopped disputes on the stand. He was generally a good-humored and sensible man, but when he was drunk, nobody liked to come near his fist, as he could deal a very heavy blow. The first week of my life as a cab horse was very hard. I was not used to London and the noise. The hurry, the crowds of horses, carts, and carriages that I had to make my way through made me feel anxious, but I soon found out that I could perfectly trust my driver, and then I made myself easy and got used to it. Jerry was a very good driver and thought a lot about his horses. He soon found out that I was willing to work and do my best, and he never laid the whip on me. In a short time, I and my master understood each other as well as horse and man can do. In the stable, too, he did all that he could for our comfort. Jerry kept us very clean and gave us as much food as he could. And not only that, he always gave us plenty of clean fresh water. But the best thing we had here was our Sundays for rest. We worked so hard in the week that this day helped us to survive it. Besides, we had then time to enjoy each other's company. It was on these days that I learned my companion's history. Captain was an old war horse. His first owner was an officer of cavalry who took part in the Crimean War. Captain said he enjoyed the training with all the other horses, trotting together, turning together to the right or the left, halting at the word of command, or dashing forward at full speed at the sound of the trumpet or signal of the officer. When young, he was a dark, iron-gray horse, and considered very handsome. His master, a young gentleman, was very fond of him and treated him with care and kindness. He thought the life of an army horse was very pleasant, but when he was sent abroad over the sea in a big ship, he almost changed his mind. We could not walk off the land into the ship. That's why they put strong straps under our bodies, lifted us in spite of our struggles, and put us onto the deck of a big ship. There we were placed in small stalls and never for a long time saw the sky, or were able to stretch our legs. The ship sometimes rolled about in high winds, and we were knocked about, and felt bad enough. But at last it came to an end. They lifted us and put again to the land. We were very glad when we again felt firm ground under our feet. We soon found out that the country we had come to was different from our own, and that we had many hardships to face besides the war. But many cavalrymen were so fond of their horses that they did everything they could to make them comfortable, in spite of snow, wet, and all such things. "But what about the fighting?" I asked. "Wasn't that worse than anything else?" "Well," said he, "we always liked to hear the trumpet and were impatient to start off, though sometimes we had to stand for hours waiting for the word of command. And when the command was given, we used to spring forward as gaily and eagerly as if there were no cannon balls, bayonets, or bullets. I, with my noble master, went into many actions together without a wound. My master's cheery voice made me feel as if he and I could not be killed. I had such perfect trust in him that while he was guiding me, I was ready to charge up to the very cannon's mouth. I saw many brave men cut down, many fall mortally wounded from their saddles, and there was one day which I shall never forget." Here old Captain paused for a while. I waited, and he went on. "It was one autumn morning. The men stood by their horses waiting, ready for orders. Before the day began, we heard the firing of the enemy's guns. Then one of the officers rode up and gave the word for the men to mount, and in a second every man was in his saddle. My dear master and I were at the head of the line. Patting my neck, he said, "We shall have a hard day today, Bayard, my beauty, but we will do our duty as we have done." He stroked my neck that morning more than before. I cannot tell all that happened on that day, but I will tell of the last charge that we made together. It was across a valley right in front of the enemy's cannon. It was very fearful, but no one stopped, no one turned back. My dear master was cheering his comrades with his right arm raised on high when one of the balls struck him. I tried to check my speed, but the sword dropped from his right hand, the rein fell from the left one, and he fell to the earth. The other riders swept past us. I wanted to keep my place by his side and not leave him under that rush of horses' feet, but it was in vain. Now, without a master or a friend, I was alone on that slaughter ground. Then fear took hold on me, and I trembled as I had never trembled before. I tried to join in the ranks and gallop with the other horses, but I was beaten off by the swords of the soldiers. Just then a soldier, whose horse had been killed under him, caught at my bridle and mounted me. And with this new master I was again going forward. But we were overpowered. Some of the horses had been so badly wounded that they could hardly move from the loss of blood. Other noble creatures were trying on 3 legs to drag themselves along, and others were struggling to rise on their 4 feet when their hind legs had been shattered by shot. After the battle, the wounded men were brought in, and the dead were buried. "And what about the wounded horses?" I said. "Were they left to die?" "No, the army farriers went over the field with their pistols and shot all that were ruined. Some that had only slight wounds were brought back and attended to, but the greater part of the noble, willing creatures that went out that morning never came back. In our stables there was only about 1 in 4 that returned. I never saw my dear master again. I believe he fell dead from the saddle. I never loved any other master so much. I went into many other battles, but I was only once wounded, and when the war was over, I came back to England." I said, "I have heard people talk about war as if it was a very fine thing." "Ah," said he, "I think they never saw it. No doubt it is very fine when there is no enemy, when it is just exercise and parade. But when thousands of good brave men and horses are killed or crippled for life, it has a very different look." "Do you know what they fought about?" said I. "No," he said. "That is more than a horse can understand." Chapter 17. I never knew a better man than my new master. He was kind and good, and he was very fond of making little songs and singing them to himself. One he was very fond of was this: "Come, father and mother, and sister and brother, come, all of you, turn to and help one another." And so they did. Harry always wanted to do what he could. Then Polly and Dolly used to come in the morning to help with the cab, to brush and beat the cushions and rub the glass, while Jerry was giving us a cleaning in the yard, and Harry was rubbing the harness. There used to be a great deal of laughing and fun between them, and it put Captain and me in good spirits. They were always early in the morning, for Jerry would say, "If you in the morning throw minutes away, you can't pick them up in the course of the day. You may hurry and scurry and flurry and worry, you've lost them forever, forever and aye." He could not bear any waste of time, and people who were always late and wanted a cab to be driven hard because of their idleness made him very angry. One day 2 young men came out of a tavern close by the stand and called Jerry. "Hey, cabby, we're rather late. Hurry up and take us to the Victoria station in time for the 1 o'clock train. You shall have a shilling extra." "I will take you at the regular price, gentlemen. I don't need your extra shilling." Larry's cab was standing next to ours. He flung open the door and said, "I'm your man, gentlemen. Take my cab, my horse will get you there fast." Although Jerry was against hard driving to please careless people, he always went at a good fair pace, and was not against putting on the steam, as he said, if only he knew why. I well remember one morning we were on the stand waiting for a fare, and a young man carrying a heavy portmanteau slipped on a piece of orange peel which lay on the pavement, and fell down with great force. Jerry was the first to run and lift him up. The young man was in great pain. "Can you take me to the South-Eastern Railway?" said the young man. "I'm late because of this unlucky fall, but I must catch the 12 o'clock train. It is very important for me." "I'll do my very best," said Jerry, "if you think you are well enough, sir," for the young man looked white and ill. "I must go," he said earnestly. "Please let us lose no time." The next minute Jerry was on the box and twitched the rein the way I well understood. "Now then, Jack, my boy," said he, "let's go. We'll show them how fast we can be, if we only know why." In the middle of the day, the streets of the city are full of traffic, and it is difficult to drive fast. But we did what we could. When a good driver and a good horse understand each other, it is wonderful what they can do. The streets were very full that day, but we got on pretty well as far as the bottom of Cheapside, where there was a block for 3 or 4 minutes. The young man put his head out and said, "I think I had better get out and walk. I shall never get there if this goes on." "I'll do all that can be done, sir," said Jerry. "I think we shall be in time. This block-up cannot last much longer, and your luggage is very heavy for you to carry, sir." At any rate, we whirled into the station just as the big clock pointed to 8 minutes to 12 o'clock. "Thank God we are in time," said the young man. "And thank you too, my friend, and your good horse. You have saved me more than money can ever pay for. Take this extra half-crown." "No, sir. Thank you all the same. I'm so glad we are on time, sir. But hurry up now, sir. The bell is ringing. Porter, take this gentleman's luggage. Dover line 12 o'clock train. That's it." And without waiting for another word, Jerry wheeled me round to make room for other cabs that were dashing up at the last minute. "Poor young fellow," he said. "I wonder what it was that made him so anxious." Jerry often talked to himself quite loud enough for me to hear when we were not moving. When Jerry returned to the rank, there was a good deal of laughing at him for driving hard to the train for an extra fare all against his principles, and everybody wanted to know how much he had pocketed. "Much more than I generally get," said he. "I'll live on what he gave me for several days." "He is a humbug," said one of the drivers, "preaching to us and then doing the same himself." "Look here, mates," said Jerry. "The gentleman offered me half-a-crown extra, but I didn't take it. It was enough for me to see how glad he was to catch that train. And if Jack and I want to have a quick run now and then to please ourselves, that's our business and not yours." "Well," said Larry, "you'll never be a rich man." "Most likely not," said Jerry, "but I'm sure I shall not be less happy for that." "If you ever do get rich," said Governor Gray, looking over his shoulder across the top of his cab, "you'll deserve it, Jerry. As for you, Larry, you'll die poor. You spend too much on whipcord." "Well," said Larry, "what am I supposed to do if my horse won't go without it?" "You never take the trouble to see if he will go without it. You're always changing your horses. And why? Because you never give them any peace or encouragement." "Well, I have not had good luck," said Larry. "That's the reason." "And you never will," said the governor. "Good luck is rather particular who she rides with, and prefers those who have got common sense and a good heart. At least that is my experience." Governor Gray turned round again to his newspaper, and the other men went to their cabs. Chapter 18. One morning, a gentleman walked into the yard. "Your servant, sir," said Jerry. "Good morning, Mr. Barker," said the gentleman. "Can you take Mrs. Briggs regularly to church on Sunday mornings? We go to the new church now, and that is rather far away for her. She cannot walk there." "Thank you, sir," said Jerry, "but I have only a 6 days license, and I cannot take a fare on Sundays. It will be illegal." "Oh," said the gentleman, "I did not know you have a 6 days cab, but it will be very easy to alter your license. The fact is, Mrs. Briggs prefers you to drive her." "I should be glad to please the lady, sir, but I had a 7 days license once, and the work was too hard for me and for my horses. Not a day's rest, and never a Sunday with my wife and children, and never able to go to church. So now I have only a 6 days license, and I find it much better." "Well, of course," replied Mr. Briggs. "Every person should have rest and be able to go to church on Sundays. But I thought you would not mind such a short distance for the horse, and only once a day. You will have all the afternoon and evening for yourself. Besides, we are very good customers." "Yes, sir, that is true, and I'm grateful for all favors, but I can't give up my Sunday, sir. I read that God made man, and he made horses and all the other beasts, and as soon as he had made them, he made a day of rest." "Oh, very well," said the gentleman. "Don't trouble yourself, Mr. Barker. I will ask somewhere else." And he walked away. "Well," says Jerry to me, "we can't help it, Jack, old boy. We must have our Sundays." "Polly," he shouted, "Polly, come here." She was there in a minute. "What is it all about, Jerry?" "My dear, Mr. Briggs wants me to take Mrs. Briggs to church every Sunday morning. I say I have only a 6 days license. He says get a 7 days license, and I'll pay you well for it. Polly, they are very good customers to us. What do you say, my little woman?" "I say, Jerry," says she, speaking very slowly, "thank God you earn enough to provide for us, but sometimes it is hard to pay for all the oats and hay, the license and the rent. But Harry will soon be earning something, and I will struggle on harder than go back to those horrid times when you hardly had a minute to look at your own children, and we never could go to a place of worship together or have a happy, quiet day. God forbid that we should ever turn back to those times. That's what I say, Jerry." "And that is just what I told Mr. Briggs, my dear," said Jerry, "and what I mean to stick to. I won't go back to the old times, even if I earned twice as much. So that is settled, little woman. Now cheer up, and I'll be off to the stand." 3 weeks passed after this conversation, and no order came from Mrs. Briggs. So there was nothing but taking jobs from the stand. Jerry took it to heart a good deal, for of course the work was harder for horse and man. But Polly always cheered him up, saying, "Never mind, father, never mind. Do your best and leave the rest. It will all come right, some day or night." It soon became known that Jerry had lost his best customer. Most of the men said he was a fool, but 2 or 3 took his side. 2 or 3 weeks after this, we came into the yard rather late in the evening. Polly came running across the road with a lantern. "Everything is all right, Jerry. Mrs. Briggs sent her servant this afternoon to ask you to take you out tomorrow at 11 o'clock. The fact is, Mr. Briggs has been trying other cabs, but there is something wrong with them all. Some drive too fast and some too slow. She says there is no one of them so nice and clean as your cab, and nothing will suit her but Mr. Barker's cab again." Polly was almost out of breath, and Jerry broke out into a merry laugh. "You were right, my dear. It will all come right, some day or night. Go and get the supper, and I'll have Jack's harness off and make him happy in no time." After this, Mrs. Briggs wanted Jerry's cab as often as before, however, never on Sunday. But there came a day when we did have Sunday work, and this was how it happened. We had all come home on the Saturday night very tired and very glad to think that the next day would be all rest. But it was not so. On Sunday morning, Jerry was cleaning me in the yard when Polly came up to him, looking very worried. "What is it?" said Jerry. "My dear," she said, "poor Dinah Brown has just got a letter saying that her mother is dangerously ill and that she must go right now if she wishes to see her alive. The place is out in the country, more than 10 miles away from here. She says if she takes the train, she should still have 4 miles to walk, but she is so weak and the baby is only 4 weeks old, so that will be impossible for her. She wants to know if you can take you there in your cab, and she promises to pay you well." "Tut, tut, we'll see about that. It's not the money I'm thinking about, but of losing our Sunday. The horses are tired, and I'm tired too. That's the main problem." "It's only half Sunday," said Polly, "but you know we should do to other people as we should like they do to us." "Polly, I've had my Sunday morning sermon early today. You may go and tell Dinah that I'll be ready for her as the clock strikes 10. Now, give me a bit of bread and cheese, and I'll be back in the afternoon as soon as I can. And I'll have the meat pie ready for an early tea instead of for dinner," said Polly. And she went away while he made his preparations. He chose me for that journey, and at 10 o'clock we started in a light, high-wheeled gig, which ran so easily that after the 4-wheeled cab it seemed like nothing. It was a fine May day. As soon as we were out of town, the sweet air, the smell of the fresh grass, and the soft country roads were as pleasant as they used to be in the old times, and I soon began to feel fresh. Dinah's family lived in a small farmhouse close by a meadow with some fine shady trees. There were 2 cows feeding in it. A young man tied me up in the cowshed, as he did not have a better stable to offer. "The best we have is at your service for your kindness to my sister. We shall be having dinner in an hour, and I hope you'll come in." Jerry thanked him kindly, and after he had some dinner with him, he decided to take a walk in the meadow. When my harness was taken off, I did not know what to do first, to eat the grass, or roll over on my back, or lie down and rest, or have a gallop across the meadow just because I was free, and I did all by turns. Jerry seemed to be as happy as I was. He sat down by a bank under a shady tree and listened to the birds. Then he sang himself and read out of the little brown book he was so fond of, then walked round the meadow and down by a little brook where he picked the flowers. Then he gave me a good feed of the oats which he had brought with him. But the time seemed too short. I had not been in a field since I left poor Ginger at Earl's Hall. When we came home, Jerry's first words were, "Well, Polly, I have not lost my Sunday after all, for the birds were singing hymns in every bush. Jack was like a young colt." When he handed Dolly the flowers, she jumped with joy.